And we are recording. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this week's webinar on running a restaurant. My name is Ahmed Jamal Vattu. I will be your moderator for this event. I am from the batch of 2015. I work at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. With me, my first speaker is Danial Noorani from the Eidson College batch of 2002. Danial is the founder and CEO of Just Burgers and Awesomosas. Next up, our second speaker is Raza Ahmed from the Eidson College batch of 2005. Raza is founder and CEO of Bamboo Union in Gulberg. Now, this event is sponsored by AMG, which is the HSN Mentorship Group. We are a group of over 1,000 old boys connected mainly over the following social media platforms: WhatsApp, Facebook, and Discord. We host events like these to educate Edsonians and alumni about things like entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and potential career paths. To participate, you can always email me. This is my email address. Now, our format for today's event is that we will first have a discussion with the speakers. This will be followed by a brief Q&A session and some networking in the end if we do have time. So I'll just stop sharing my screen now and go to our first question, which is for Danial first. Danial, what motivated you to enter the hospitality and specifically the restaurant industry? Could you please shed some light on this?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Emmett, for coordinating this. It's great to be able to link with the community. So what got me into the hospitality industry wasn't anything like, it wasn't in sort of a thought out decision or anything like it was well educated. I think Raza was much more thorough in his analysis and his, assessment for going into the hospitality business. I was working on a couple of ventures already. I had an advertising agency and an animation studio. And then this was just, a conversation over lunch with my partner, who was my, cousin. And she was looking for something to do in the food space. And for some reason, in those days, the name Awesomosas was in my mind. So I said, why don't we try, making gourmet samosas and do something interesting with that and different fillings. And she's like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. And then itafaq se, a month or two later, Lahore Eat was happening and they had, started advertising. So I'm a rather impulsive person. I sort of put in the deposit for the Lahore Eat fee. And then I told my cousin and she was like, I thought you were joking. And I'm like, no, this is now this is a serious venture. So then we started experimenting with the samosas. And then Lahore Eat happened, where we sold around about 5,000, 6,000 samosas over the course of the weekend. And then you're like, this is, such a great success. You must turn it into a business, which, later on you realize the dynamics of a food festival versus a restaurant are very different. So, we thought we had, gotten a MVP sort of success and we should open an outlet. And then from there we kind of have just been figuring things out and learning from it. So that's how I got into the hospitality industry. It was just sort of like a weekend whim that turned into something that's now been about 6 years, mashallah se. And it's been a very interesting and fun journey.
Interesting. So it almost sounds like it started as a joke, and then when it actually got a lot of success, that's when you decided to turn it into like a business, legitimate business.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it started as a joke. I think I didn't. It started off as an impulsive thing, sort of like like something that we weren't thinking कि food festival के बाद shop खोलेंगे या कुछ इस तरह. It was just case spur of the moment. यार चलो let's do this. करने का दिल चाह रहा है कर लेते हैं. ठीक है. But it wasn't like if you have a business plan in which you say कि अच्छा यार I'm doing this as a launch event. This launch event will lead into sort of me starting a home-based business. And then once I get certain number of orders, so it wasn't as thought out as that. It was just, we just did something impulsively. And then once we saw success, we were like, okay, how do we turn this into a business?
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that answer, Daniel. I'll take the same question to Raza. Raza, what motivated you to open Bamboo Union?
So my journey actually started off as a thought planted by one of my uncles. He was trying to help me out when I'd taken some time off from the stuff that I was doing, which was being a part of the family business, which was the troubled side of the business anyway. So he just noticed. He was like, I was very particularly meticulous about what I wanted and exactly what I wanted on the table. When he's just sort of a guy where he's like, I just eat to fill up my stomach, and you have so many demands with just one of your meals. So why don't you just get into this hospitality industry? Interestingly, for me, it was I laughed it off, and then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, you know what? Actually, it's not a bad idea. I can do it. One of my uncles, one of my mother's brother ran a couple of restaurants in Dubai at that time. So he had actually suggested you should go there, work for a bit, and then see what you can do. So I did go to Dubai. I spent about a year and a half there. Um, sort of got the stamp from my family's side that okay, now he's sort of ready. Uh, but that wasn't it. I mean, I still had no idea as to how, what, when I was gonna do. Then I started a bit of a research project where I was studying places which had shut down, which had opened up, which were running for more than let's say 15-20 years. What was the reason? And I guess that would be the answer to your next question. I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead.
No, no worries. So easy. Thank you so much for that. तो चले, I'll go to the next question, which is very related. कि आपने जो आपकी niche थी, how did you find that? What specific steps for market research did you take? आपने analyze किया, like you said, detail में कि कौन से restaurants चल रहे हैं, कौन से नहीं. Did you have any Pan Asian restaurants in mind, or were you the pioneer in this thing, Pan Asian cuisine लाना in Lahore?
So I had no idea about opening what restaurant. I just knew I wanted to open up a restaurant. And then, my research suggested that two things work in the long term, especially for Lahore. Uh, Top of the list is Pakistani cuisine. If you have a decent desi restaurant and you keep yourself up to date, and you don't really give in, and you sort of keep your quality standards up to the mark, you'll actually make it. You'll survive. You'll be there for the long run. And then number two was Chinese. So we grew up on having Chinese food. So I thought Chinese would be a little easier because at that time, and we're talking about 2016 when I opened up the restaurant, all the old Chinese restaurants are sort of dying out. And I had seen a couple of new concepts in the US and in Dubai. One was Payway. Payway is an offshoot of, I'm sure you know about that, but it's a casual diner of PF Chang's. And then one was Wagamama. So both were sort of in line with what I was thinking. And the one thing that really bugged me generally about Chinese food in Pakistan was that why do you have to enter a place thinking that, oh, I have to be really dressed up or wearing a shirt or wearing a pant to a Chinese place? That was the decor. It was white cloth and table napkin service. It wasn't everything about the dining experience was sort of formal. And I could only associate family dinners or, formal occasions to Chinese food. So that was one thing that I picked up on, and I thought, we could really change up that culture and make this dining a little more, casual and nothing which you plan out for.
Thank you so much for that answer, Raza. Really shed some light. I'd like to take the same question to Daniel about market research. अब देखें आप you went into Lahore Eat, you had this massive success, 5,000-6,000 समोसे आपने बेचे. तो उसके बाद आपने did you care to do some research के is someone doing the same thing as me? Should I actually be going deep into this? आपने ये analyze किया था जिस तरह रजा ने explain किया था?
नहीं जी, मैंने तो कोई एनालिसिस नहीं की थी. मैंने तो कहा कि रजा की तरह मैंने ज्यादा सोचा समझा नहीं. मैं I fire from the hip. So I was figuring it out as we go, and then so Raza and I, because of the restaurant space, we actually have become very good friends, and he's been a part of many of the brainstorming sessions जो osmosis की evolution के ऊपर होती रही है. तो हमारा केस बड़ा डिफरेंट है कि ग्लोबली वी वर इनोवेटर्स, राइट? In that time, doing anything of this sort with samosas was more or less unheard of. You maybe saw some fine dining desi restaurants in the UK, have done something or the other, but no one had, given samosas their place in, like of honor. Um, so for us it was like a blue ocean. There was no research kind of to be done. We were doing experiments and we were gathering data as we went along. So once we started osmosis, we saw copycats come in the local market. But more so than the local market, we saw it go internationally. Like there are a few in UK and Singapore who are doing gourmet samosas. Canada mein. We kind of were leading the way. But as we kind of dipped our feet in it or toe into it, we realized that ye samosas jo hain, because they're considered to be cheap snacks, it's very difficult to ask for a premium price. And especially since we were just a hole in the wall, कोई ज़्यादा हमारा swanky experience नहीं था कुछ इस तरह. तो वो एक learning हुई थी कि यार price sensitivity के बारे में. Then you also started learning about product diversification. So for the first 2 years within Osmosas, I was a purist. मैंने कहा कि समोसे के अलावा मैंने कुछ serve करना ही नहीं है. It was, then we made these things called samosa burgers, which we had a samosa patty inside it, and served it in bun. Or we made samosa bowls, and we were like, let's see what all we can do with the samosa. But then we also learned that samosa for our target demographic was a very niche meal. It's not something they would have in high frequency. Even though Raza and yourself might think fondly of samosas, the frequency with which you have samosas versus the frequency with which you have burgers, pizza, or Chinese would be much lower. So then we learned कि यार इस product का भी एक inherent issue है within Pakistan. So then we kept on getting data, and we were like, while we were doing it, we kept on doing our tests. And then now we've kind of come to a sweet spot where we've expanded the menu to say street foods of Pakistan. We've got some really good charts. We've then innovated in charts. We've got like a signature chart called the Doritos chart, which is like a Mexican Pakistani fusion. Then we
It's
started
excellent, by the way.
thanks bro. So anda shami, then we really focused on our tea, etc. So then we started giving a more holistic offering. साथ साथ में फिर इस तरह के when then you fall victim to desperation, or like of trying to just increase sales. So like osmosas के अंदर हमने फिर beef burgers डाल दिए, because beef burgers बिकते हैं, and we were making really good beef burgers and chicken burgers, and it was within the osmosas menu. But for some reason they weren't selling at a high volume, and then that was an understanding that was just poor brand architecture. How can a samosa brand be associated with good beef burgers? You're swimming upstream. So that led to us, rolling in our burgers into this new brand called Just Burgers, and then that's taken on a life of its own. So while we did not have good thought at the start, we've been open to learning, which has been a good sort of journey. Like, I think anything and everything that we could have done wrong with Osmosas, we've done it, and hopefully we've exhausted all the mistakes that one can make in doing a venture. And I think it's all for the better, because we've kind of come out with a much more robust and strong product. So long-winded answer, but it's that's the key of running a restaurant business, is that it's not about, like, at some point it is about yourself, but it's about what the customer wants. And you have to, you're not on some sort of mission thing. You're trying to sell food and make people happy, and so you have to, even though your preferences might be something different, you have to, at the end of the day, listen to what the customer is saying.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Daniel. So, Raza, my question for you is, we all know Bamboo Union is a hangout place for many of us, okay? And we're very excited about things like their menu and like the food offered. So do you have any plans for the future which you'd like to share with the audience who will watch this on YouTube and who are here live? Or any maybe additions to the menu?
Basically, I'd like to add, we now currently have 2 branches. One is in DHA and one is in Gulberg. The exciting news is we're opening up a hot pot restaurant, which is a specialty hot pot restaurant. Alongside, it'll have an elevated menu of Pan Asian food as well. So you can expect some nice, interesting dishes, which I don't want to disclose right now. It's called Dan Dan, by the way, and it's going to be in Gulberg, and we're opening this up with the team of Reena's, who is also an HSonian, Amar Mohsin.
Great. Thank you so much, Raza. We're really excited for that. Abhi to I'm in the US. I'm sort of like kicking myself कि मैं पाकिस्तान में नहीं हूँ when all of this activity is happening. And
you have actually great food over there. I mean, we envy the people outside Pakistan most of the times.
Yeah, in my case, opposite है. Some reason desi khane jo hai, like well, that's sort of
grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Hey, you have Ravi kebab in DC. What's a very
we have this place called Kebab Palace, like जो मेरे walking distance पे है. मैं Arlington में रह रहा हूँ, Virginia side, so which is like 20 minutes की train है from DC center. So साथ हैं restaurants, but they're not at the same level जो है ना, जो you always like miss घर का खाना. But sorry, but Daniel, मेरा आपसे सवाल था कि I haven't been back in Pakistan in a couple of months, लेकिन जो Just Burger है, is it like right next to Osmosas? Because कुछ मुझे दोस्त बता रहे थे, तो does that help the business in the way कि जो आपके Osmosas के जो वो customers थे, they now go to Just Burgers for like really great food?
Yeah, so they're adjacent, and the food is actually cooked from the same kitchen. You can see inside of that. It's a shared space, but we've kind of crafted out in the front, at least the seating areas, they have their distinctive brand elements. Yeah, definitely. The two businesses support each other fairly well, in the sense that Osmosas is a snack time place. So people are coming in at the evening time, which is usually not burger time. So both brands kind of complement each other. The menu also does complement each other. Like when I have guests over, I start off with using Osmosas as an appetizers, and the mains are the burgers, and then again Osmosas for dessert and tea and coffee, etc. So they do play off of each other, both from a business perspective and an experience perspective. So yeah, they've it's been a good marriage.
Right, thank you. So Raza, my next question is for you. Did you face any major hurdles when setting up Bamboo Union, and how did you overcome these hurdles?
You sent me these questions, and I was actually thinking really hard I actually gave it a thought for 1 hour. I was like, when I was opening up the restaurant, I was just focused on getting the restaurant open. And honestly, the biggest challenge I would say was finding the right location. But I wouldn't even call it a challenge, because that's just a piece of preference that you have, or a target that you've set for yourself. But I would say that the biggest challenge, not even right now, but once you start this business, I lost about 10 kgs in the first month when we opened the restaurant. And that's where my answer is, that once you start this business, you go a little nuts, because there's so many variables. You're dealing with um, the labor class, which is not educated, which is well trained in their fields, but you have to listen to them. And then there are external factors like water shortages, electricity shortages, government departments, COVID, whatnot. So every day we wake up and we're sort of firefighting for, at least for me, I was firefighting every day for the first year when I started this business. And then we built a decent team around, where we don't have to worry about a lot of things anymore, starting off from the purchasing to customer service to social media. I was overlooking almost everything. I would leave my house at around 10 a.m., get back home at around 1:30 a.m. And that was my life for 1 year. No holidays. If it's Eid time, if it's a national holiday, you're even busier. So yeah, I guess a lot of challenges that you face, or most of the challenges that I've faced and have been facing, have been once we started the business. I mean, along the way, when you're making the restaurant, we don't really have big compliance departments, or places where you have to get the permissions and all. But once you start the business, the 360 problems that you have to deal with.
Yeah, thank you. So sounds like
Just
time commitment and like handling all these different variables does
Yeah.
take a toll. So Daniel,
yeah,
same
just
question.
to add, just to add to that, it's a very high pressure business, in the sense that, imagine the customer is coming with the expectation that you will make them happy, you will make them feel good, and they have this aspiration in their head, कि I've chosen your restaurant, and your restaurant has to make me feel this way. And so, and that is every single customer that comes in that day, and meeting that expectation is something, really sort of, intense. Okay, to be able to do that, there's so many different things that have to happen before the restaurant is open for that day, which, as Raza said, making sure procurement is done, making sure you have all the staff and all of that done. And then when the restaurant is there, the service greeter, if he doesn't greet the person warmly enough, immediately, the person is off, they're like, ye kis tarah ka restaurant hai, server ne attention diya. Then if the food is not made properly, etc., on time, so it's extreme pressure, because each customer is a client who is expecting high demanding. And if you do not give them what they want, they will make sure you know it. And they will make sure you feel the pain. So that's something that, is extremely, high pressure. At the same time, it's also fairly rewarding, because compared to other businesses, you also get instant gratification, because there at the restaurant whether your customer is happy or not. It's not something that you have to be confused about कि यार बंदे को पसंद आए नहीं पसंद आए. So it's a double-edged sword, but this is, as Raza said, like opening a business restaurant is not difficult. Running a restaurant is difficult.
Thank you, Daniel. Adding to that, specifically in your case, were there any additional challenges which you had to overcome? Maybe was there like pressure from elsewhere were there like different voices saying that maybe this is not the right thing to do, opening a restaurant? And how did you overcome that?
Fortunately, have a fairly supportive environment in the sense that people should be questioning you and you should be questioning yourself at all times, and that allows for growth to happen. If you're just saying everything is good all the time, that means for the most part you're stagnant. So it was a healthy environment. The challenges, I've already touched upon it. The challenges were with product market fit. Okay, what is this product, and how it resonates with the market, what we were offering as an experience. So those were the major challenges, because again, um, we had a product that was not really done before, and we were getting data as we were doing it. So it was fairly you know important for us to adapt as we go and see what we could add. For the first 2 years, as I mentioned, I was very rigid. Manika, let's see if this hypothesis works, and it didn't work. Like a specialty samosa shop was not viable. I had to add other products into it to you know give customers options. Because why are options important? Is say that 5 friends going, and 4 of them want to have samosas and one of them doesn't want to have samosas. If they came to my restaurant before, they wouldn't have any option. They would be like, that one friend out of that 5 could completely derail the option of going to our samosas. So that's why optionality is also important. Specialization is good, but at some point you have to have this balance. So these were the type of challenges that were fairly intellectual. Then, as Raza said, the day to day, human resources is a challenge. In the restaurant industry, retention is a challenge that you face. um, but once you get those human resources trained and you're able to retain them and incentivize them, make them feel like they're part of the organization, then your sort of engine starts working. So as Raza says, it took some time for him to get there. It took us longer to get there. But now it's in a stage where the operations are running on their cells, don't have to be involved on a day-to-day basis, can think on what to do next.
Right. Thank you so much for that answer, Daniel. Raza, let's talk about, we talked about the challenges. Now let's talk about the positives of owning a restaurant. How has it positively affected the way, you live life? Has it changed you in many ways?
uh, has made me a lot more patient, uh, interestingly. But just like Daniel said, that that instant gratification that you get is the single most rewarding thing that you sort of get. I mean, if you're at the restaurant, I'm at the restaurant and I see somebody and then they instantly say something nice, it just sort of takes away a lot of troubles that you go through in the morning or have been going through for the past couple of weeks. It's just, it really reassures that, okay, I'm doing something right. My team is doing something right. We're doing something right. And we're probably, headed in the right direction. But then again, social media also made our lives very easy. I won't talk about the negatives over here because I feel the single biggest factor around that time when we opened up was not word of mouth. It was more to do with the social media and how social media triggered growth of restaurants. And now, during these past 6 years, we've seen an exponential growth of new restaurants.
Right. Very interesting, Ji. Thank you so much for that answer, Raza. Now I'd like to go to the advice part of this webinar, where now we're going to try to, impart advice to people who have joined this webinar, who want to, advice on, restaurant kholna kaise hai. So going back in time, what do you know now, which you would have told yourself years back before you opened the restaurant? What are some, skills which you wish you had, some ideas which you wish you had, which you would like to share? I'll start with Daniel for this.
So I think be a little bit more research oriented. Don't just go over your whims and sort of the pros and cons to both approach. Sometimes you can get paralysis by analysis, but other times you jump in first and then you realize ke kya ho raha hai. So one of that would be there. Then invest in processes from day one. If you're looking to have a business that scales, having good processes from quality assurance, safety, inventory, procurement, etc., investing in those teams will make your life a lot easier in the long run. It's easier said than done, but if you start off thinking about those things from day one, it makes it easier, because once your restaurant is running, it's very difficult to change habits, and it's very difficult to change culture once you've sort of established that. So just being mindful of investing in those sort of systems and processes from day one, and just being a little bit more mindful in research. But again, in my case, again, as I said, it's a double-edged sword. No amount of research will guarantee a success, and sort of जहाँ पे लिखी है किस्मत वहाँ पे लिखी है. So at some point or the other you have to take that leap of faith, but it's better to sort of dabble. Like Raza's path was a lot more, I would say, recommended, in the sense that he got exposure of the restaurant business, which wasn't his. So he got to see it as an outsider and sort of learn from it, and then say, okay, I would like to do this in my restaurant. I won't like to do this process in my restaurant. So just being a little bit more sort of, open to learning. I think that would be the advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Raza, can you share any advice?
I would agree with Daniel that one should at least work somewhere to sort of understand what they're in for, because sometimes, most of the times, this business looks more interesting than how it is. For example, when people walk in on a Saturday at a restaurant, or rather the weekend, they see the restaurant full, and then they reverse calculate, and they say, oh, this guy is making X amount of money. Oh my God, this is the best business to be in. No, you have to visit us 7 days a week to understand how well how badly we're doing. So I guess a lot of things which people do misread in our industry is the sort of footfall that we get throughout the week, and then they just peg their thought process. Oh, weekend पे तो इतना rush होता है, इतने पैसे बनाते हैं. So that's something I would totally discourage, and I would suggest that one should, if you're getting into starting to think about getting into this business, do give businesses a full shot. Try to visit your favorite eatery, or the eatery that you're trying to build. Probably visit their second best, or your competitor, at least once a week, and then see how well they're doing. You'll get a rough idea of how your business sales could be, or what your market potential is. And then again, don't worry too much. I would also agree that one can only do, you can only lift one leg, the other one you can't, you'll just fall down. So this is also with your hard work, or your even if you're passionate about something, you have to leave a lot of things to God. And you have to believe that things will go a certain way. And that's what my I would summarize my uh, thought process while I was opening. A lot of my friends used to say, you're spending so much money. Have you ever thought that when you fail, or if you fail, to kya hoga? And I had a tunnel vision at that time. I was like, I have to do this, and if I fail, I leave it to God, which is a ridiculously stupid thing as well. If you ask somebody who's about 30 years old, but then you have to take that leap of faith for sure.
Thank you so much for the golden advice. Let's give all our speakers, Raza Ahmed and Daniel Nurani, a huge round of applause. Virtual applause from my side. Really appreciate everything. And now we'll go to our Q&A session with the audience. Now, this is your opportunity to ask any questions. Please raise your hand, go to reactions, use the raise hand feature, and you can ask a question. So any one of our audience members who has a question, please feel free. I think our आपके batchmate जो हैं Raza, he's sorry. Yeah, we have one raised hand. Agha Murtaza, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Daniel. Hey, Raza. Hope all is well. I have a question, and I apologize if this is out of the scope of the conversation, but I've been living in North America for the past 12 years. I've seen recently there's been a lot of Pakistanis immigrating to Canada, for instance, and they're coming from either Pakistan or from the Middle East. But they're coming in and they're setting up restaurants. I don't know if you have already partnered or working as a consultant for any of them. Any advice you would give to those guys as they look to set up? I know even though they're Pakistanis, bit different market here, but just curious to get your thoughts on it.
So I'll just the expat market is an interesting one. And as you said, it's slightly different. Not in a particularly sort of good position to give advice on the Canadian market, but from what I understand, it's a lot more costly to set up a venture over there. It's a lot more costly to sustain a venture. Yahan Pakistan mein labor is fairly cheap, and then you don't have those level of safety requirements and training. So there are a lot more additional expenses in doing a business in Canada versus Pakistan. So one thing I would say, just keep a consultant for the recipes possibly, but having a local business advisor who has an idea of all the costs would be better. But yeah, consultant wise, I am not doing anything. I've registered osmosas in the US and in the UK. When I started it off, I had dreams ke ye karna hai, but obviously time is a limitation. Haven't had the time to get around to it, but it's a growing space, as you can see. In Canada, Pakistanis and Indians become one sort of market, and so you can tap into a larger audience. So it's an interesting space. Might get overcrowded, but if you have any questions, Aga, you can just message me on Facebook as well.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Reggie, our next question is from Sarnaki Abbas. Please go ahead.
Great session. Thank you very much. Question to both. What is a good number of years that is required to break even if you open a restaurant? I know it varies from restaurant to restaurant, but Pakistan mein average kitna saal lagenge when you can say you are breaking even and you're making profit?
Yeah, I think Raza can take this.
I think a decent time to break even is 2.5 years. But given the current environment with our currency devaluation and what's been happening around, I would say 3.5 years would be a realistic approach. But as much as I don't want to say it, but the first 1.5-2 years really define what your business is going to be in the next 4-5 years and more so. So I've seen a lot of businesses that have not been breaking even every month, and people putting in money. Daniel did understand, and he found out the problems, he solved them, and then now he's doing really well. So ये चीज जनरली ये वाला टाइम फ्रेम लोगों के पास नहीं होता, only because either the rents are too high, your running costs, like even labor now is not cheap. I would agree with Daniel, it's fairly much cheaper than what it is in Canada, but it's still the highest paid head even before rent now. So the biggest expense these days for us is not our rent, it's our labor.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you so much for the question and that
So,
great answer.
just to
Kanwal,
add on that is ke, break even ke do definitions hai. One is ke when you return your or get your capital back. ठीक है ना? And I think that's what sort of Raza was highlighting, that you recover your initial investment between 2 to 3 years की बात है. यही ना, Raza? Like you were.
Yeah. That's how I interpreted the question. Yeah.
Operational break even should be happening from pretty much day one. Like you should be sort of making money or at least meeting your expenses. Chalo, 3 months into the venture, typically restaurant का जो होता है कि पहले दिन बड़े अच्छे होते हैं क्योंकि आप marketing करते हैं नए जो है, so people come to try it, and then there's a big dip, and then after that you stabilize where your actual sort of sales are at. So you should be breaking even on an operational basis fairly early on. And I agree with Raza ke the return on capital should be somewhere around 2 years, I think, if you're going to be a business that survives. If you don't do it within that thing, there's a market is telling you that there's something amiss with your product, because it's slower than I would say is expected.
So thank you so much, G. Do we have any more questions? Please do raise your hand. If we don't, then I can actually stop recording and then we can go on to network for 5 minutes if everyone's okay with that.
Sounds good.
Well, to our YouTube audience, thank you so much for watching up to this point, and hope to see you again next week. We're planning to have another session, but on law, so careers in law, as like hopefully we're going to have a judge on as well, along with a senior lawyer. So please do look forward to that, and I'll see you next week.